we've actually spec'd out the suspension geometry points of the car, so you don't have to worry about getting lost in the geometry of the car. Elan did a ton of testing in the beginning to identify what were going to be the more advantageous spots to exploit as far as geometry goes. And those are going to be what we've spec'd in the car, so everyone's on an equal footing starting in the series in 2016.
One of the big changes on a race car is you have sort of a center fuselage. One of the key points on this car is that your safety cell, your survival cell, is a central chassis, tube frame, fairly robust. But there's a lot of bodywork outside of that. And one of the big features there is it absorbs a lot of energy before anything hits that rigid survival cell. Well, the other end of that is your track width is a long way from your chassis. If you were to put outboard shocks on it, they'd be leaned over so far. Your motion ratio is pretty poor. So to get that back, we've gone with push rods and rockers to get the shocks inboard, and then we can choose the motion ratio that we want. So to start the program, we started with a footprint about the same as our IMSA Light car. It's a 74.5-inch outside width. The wheelbase is about 102 inches. The overhangs are pretty minimal. There's enough overhang to get a meaningful splitter at the front, but the rear is pretty short just to keep all the mass as close into the car as possible, as close to the center of the car as possible. One of the main things we thought we would struggle with is front weight. In order to keep a nice simplistic suspension, we wanted the front wheel center line to be at the front of the chassis, and that allows us to package all of the rockers and the push rods and the shocks all on one bulkhead, and the steering as well. All that can be welded on a jig, and it's nice and consistent, always fits, always works the same on every car. But in order to do that, we had to put the tires up there where it would all work. So in order to get enough front weight, we had to push the engine and keep the drivetrain pretty far to the front. We have swept the axles rearward, and that keeps the drivetrain nice and tight up to the back of the driver to get the weight distribution reasonable. Another feature of the suspension is that we've gone with fairly large, inexpensive rod ends. They're not the expensive race spec rod ends. They're typically commercial grade rod ends, but we've oversized them so they can accommodate the load. That's to say that if at some point you wanted to put stickier tires on it, you could go up to the more expensive rod end without having to change all your top hats and suspension pieces. You could go up to the stronger stuff and have the durability that you're after. The other side to that is we've gone with one size rod end for all of the lowers, one size for all of the uppers, and one size for all the push rods and rockers and all that sort of thing. Again, there's not very many spares you have to carry to service the whole car.